With Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX having launched in the West after the franchise had seemingly pulled out, the hope that more franchises will follow suit is definitely one held by many in the monster taming community. Now, that said, we still don't know what the future for Monster Rancher in the West is, but hopefully we see future installments make their way here, and my biggest hope is that other devs will follow suit as well. There are a ton of monster taming games that exist in the East that have never seen a Western release, and honestly, I feel like we're really missing out, and despite the recent upswing in monster taming outside of Pokemon as a whole, we still have yet to see some of these franchises even talk about the West. Anyways, all of this is to say that today's video is going to be going over 5 monster taming games and subsequently franchises that have titles unreleased in the West. There's actually a ton, to be quite frank, so if this is something that you guys like, let me know in the comments below and perhaps we'll get a sequel going for this video. My 5 picks for this video are ones that I personally would have liked to see make a comeback or come to the West in general. So that said, here are the monster taming games that we never saw. Alright, so first up on this list is sure to infuriate everyone, as I'm always seeing comments about why the heck these games didn't get localized, and that's Dragon Warrior Monsters, or Dragon Quest Monsters for the 3DS. I'm mostly going to be focusing on the first title, being Dragon Quest Monsters Terry's Wonderland, as I've got more experience with the original DWM, but just know that the sentiment is there for any Dragon Quest monster title that didn't make it to the West, which, by the way, is actually quite a few. Anyways, the original Dragon Warrior Monsters was a Game Boy Color game that sort of expanded on the Dragon Quest V monster taming mechanics in a fun spin-off title that has you playing as Terry, the protagonist, in a strange world on a quest to save your sister. The game features randomly generated realms where you can fight against and recruit enemy monsters, and various ranked tournaments which sort of act like your boss battles outside of the boss monsters that exist within each realm. The game also features a crossbreeding mechanic as well, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, Terry's Wonderland was a 3D remake, almost in the same vein as older Pokemon remakes, with them going to town, adding new monsters seen in future installments, with 609 total critters, a bunch of new features surrounding the 3DS Wi-Fi system, and even allowed you to bring over your monsters from Dragon Quest Monsters Joker 2. And all in all, this was a game that I feel like we really should have seen make a Western release. It was actually killing it in Japan, topping the chart, selling over 500,000 units just weeks after its launch, so honestly, I feel like they may have missed an opportunity in releasing it here. Alright, let's take a second to talk about Metabots, or medarots as it's referred to in Japan. We've missed out on a ton of games, including a collection that recently launched on Switch, but also some really cool 3DS titles in the form of Medarots 7, 8, and 9, and not to mention all the other titles that launched before that. Now, we did get some titles in the West in the form of the 2 GBA games, but other than that, we seriously have been missing out as far as the Metabots franchise is concerned. If you've watched the Metabots anime that aired back in the early 2000s, the games have a similar concept, where each Metabot is comprised of various interchangeable parts, all connected to a skeleton. The mind of the Metabot is held within a special chip, which essentially acts as the Metabot's soul or brain or what have you. It basically contains this information, personality, etc. People will battle their bots against each other and put up parts for wager, and these battles are turn-based, allowing for the bots to specifically target certain parts, since, as you can see, differing parts have their own health pools. Anyways, without getting too much into it, these games seriously look sick, and I'm really sad that we didn't get them in the West. I love the Metabots anime as a kid and definitely would have picked these up had I known they existed. So Telefang, or Keitai Denju Telefang, if I can pronounce that correctly, is a monster taming title set in this strange world where monsters can be called via mobile phone and utilized in battle accordingly. The monsters in this game, however, are highly sapient, so they're more like Digimon than your typical monsters seen in most monster taming games, where the creatures are generally more resembling pets, with some exceptions, of course. The game, much like a typical monster taming title, features turn-based combat, with the game's monsters, or denju, being called upon during battle based on the cell phone reception in that specific area. The game also features 3 types of evolution, one with standard level up, and the other with utilizing these DNAs that you can find throughout the game, and the third by fusing a monster with an item, further adding to this sort of weird and wacky world. What's really interesting about Telefang, however, is that it did appear in the West as a poorly translated, partially at that, and rebranded Pokemon bootleg title dubbed Pokemon Jade and Diamond, making a lot of people think that the game was nothing more than a cheap ripoff, which is hardly the case. The game has its own unique lore, systems, mechanics, and even had a sequel for the Game Boy Advance. This is another series that I would love to not only see it make it to the West, but also have a revival after all these years. One can hope. Now, while Yokai Watch 4 did release in 2019 in Japan, and it's still technically possible we could see some good news regarding localization, as of right now, other than statements made a long time ago, we've received no news regarding any sort of localization for this action RPG. There's literally a Twitter account called Daily Status of Yokai Watch 4's localization, and you can find this image posted pretty much every day, which is honestly quite sad. The Yokai Watch franchise made its way to the West on the 3DS, and was one of the first titles with monster capture elements outside of Pokemon that the masses took notice to. The fourth installment, unlike its predecessors, features active combat where you can take control of your human character and up to 3 yokai. These yokai will behave in accordance to their personalities whilst not being directly controlled by you, which is a cool nod to the personality system of the older games that dictates what the yokai will do during the turn-based combat. I've recently picked up Yokai Watch on 3DS myself, and I'm starting to play through it, and the thought of the franchise discontinuing its Western titles moving forward is kind of disheartening, especially with the monster taming genre becoming more popular just as they're seemingly pulling out. But who knows, maybe we'll see some type of miracle in a new translation team or a revival of Level 5. Finally, last but not least, is the Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei game, specifically the 1987 title, which was the first of the series and regarded by many as the first monster taming game ever. Now, I did do a video on Cosmic Soldier, which did release 2 years prior, but I feel like DDS Megami Tensei would have really done a better job in establishing the idea of monster taming prior to Pokemon outside of Dragon Quest V. This perhaps would have helped soften the Pokemon clone and Pokemon ripoff narrative that would later become very prominent post-Pokemon's release. Pokemon, by a lot of metrics, was one of the first monster taming titles in the West, and a lot of people don't even know what the original Megami Tensei games are. So much so that I've seen people try to say that Shin Megami Tensei is a franchise inspired by Pokemon, which is pretty messed up. Anyways, this dungeon crawling RPG was released for the Famicom back in 1987, as stated previously. The game will have you exploring these corridors in a 2.5D perspective, with monsters and enemies popping up whom can be killed or recruited and then utilized in combat. You also have the Moon Cycle system, which we see to this day in Shin Megami Tensei 5 almost 35 years later, which is pretty cool. Anyways, I'd totally be down with like re-releases or something, some sort of collection for the Switch. Make it happen, Nintendo, Atlas, Sega, do it up. And there you go, guys. That was a brief look at 5 monster taming games, and I guess franchises that we never got. I mean, unless you're watching from Japan, in which case I envy you heavily. As I've stated before, there are definitely more monster taming games that the East has been keeping hostage from us, and if this video was something you guys enjoyed, definitely let me know in the comments, because I will make another one just like it. Also, do note that a lot of these games that I mentioned actually have received fan translation patches and are quite easy to locate if you just Google them, so if you have emulation or a modded console, that might be something you might want to look into if you do want to play these games. Or you can just go learn Japanese real quick. I swear, with all these Japan-only games, it's really tempting. All that said, if you do enjoy monster taming content and want to see even more, definitely subscribe to the channel as I put out new monster taming videos every single day. You can also check out my Twitter and Discord, which will be linked below. And I just want to say special thanks to our patrons, especially Jim Hamilton and StealCase. And with that, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.